for. I know I've given myself a lot more than I bargained for. But as the months have progressed, I think we've come to a point now to where this morning's subject matter, maybe it'll come as a surprise to you, maybe it won't, I don't know. But, I have this thing about words because, words, how does God communicate with us? Does he reach down and, put his finger on your head and guide you around and tell you the physical way he's done this is with words. And he's given us a brain to be able to understand these things. So hopefully what we've covered has made sense to you. Okay? And this morning we come to a part where I distinctly remember myself, and I've talked to a few others about things like this, and that, it's pick or choose time, sort of a situation, okay? Pick or choose what? We talking about oranges or grapefruits, watermelons, cotton? What are we talking about here? So, if you would, turn to Ecclesiastes, the very first chapter. This would just be chapter 1. By the way, I didn't look up another one of the riddles this morning. I just was so busy with all of this. But Ecclesiastes 1, let's read the first 3 verses, and then we'll drop down a little further. It says, "The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. What advantage does man have in all his work, which he does under the sun?" Well, this word vanity, it can be referred to as something like vapor or smoke, breath. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. What does that mean? The Ecclesiastes writer is talking about life, isn't he? We come to a situation, all of us have come to a situation, we go, what difference did it make? What difference does it make? Well, let's go on over to verse 12. He starts to get a little closer to the crux of the matter here. He says, "I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem. And I set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under heaven. It is a grievous task which God has given to the sons of men to be afflicted with." Let me reread that again. It is a grievous task which God has given to the sons of men to be afflicted with. Verse 14. "I've seen all the works which have been done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity." There's that word vanity again. It's like vapor, okay? "I've seen all the works which have been done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity, and striving after wind." Let me ask you, is there anybody in here that's ever caught some wind? Maybe we've caught wind about, hey, that guy did this, or she did that sort of a thing. But what kind of wind is he actually talking about? What is this? Say again? The wind that blows? Well, what is he actually referring to, though? All that we do. Yeah, all that we do. Okay? Because who's at the center of the world anyway? Well, I am. Everybody knows that I am. Karen is. My wife is. Everybody in here is at the center of the world, right? It's like a guy told me one time, he says, "Kelley," he says, "the world doesn't revolve around your pointy little head." But we have a tendency, and we're built that way, we have that tendency to think along those lines. Verse 15. "What is crooked cannot be," I got to turn the page. "What is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted." We'll come back to that. Verse 16. "I said to myself, behold, I have magnified and increased wisdom more than all who were over Jerusalem before me, and my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. Who wrote Ecclesiastes? We're almost positive that Solomon did. Okay? And what did he ask when he became king? He asked for wisdom because he knew he did not know what to do. So he needed wisdom. So here, he's going back over his life and looking at all this. He says, before me, my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. His mind has observed that. Wow. Verse 17, and I set my mind to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. Well, if we know the history of Solomon, what did he do? He did some pretty crazy things. He was deep into exploration, let's say. It says, I realize that this is also striving after wind. You ever heard the saying, the harder I work, the harder I work? That's me. Sometimes I'm going, man, I'm striving after wind. Verse 18, because in much wisdom there is much grief, and increasing knowledge results in increasing pain. What in the world is he talking about here? More knowledge gives you more pain? How's that so? Well, we'll go on. We'll discuss this a little bit more in a little while. It occurred to me this week, in thinking about this, that there's a couple of words in the Bible that don't really appear very much, but they absolutely are at the core of everything about being a believer. Okay? Let me scoot this up a little bit. I can't see it for fear of bumping into the microphone. There's a word, it's called R-E-A-L. Anybody want to pronounce that for me? R-E-A-L. What is that word? Real. Well, according to the dictionaries, one of the primary uses of it is as an adjective. It's a descriptive, isn't it? Okay. Real as being defined, and I used two dictionaries to define this. Number one, existing in fact and not imaginary. An example, you are you. That's a real fact, isn't it? Okay? This is a book, isn't it? It exists. It is real. The second part of this is a real thing, not artificial, fraudulent, or illusory, genuine. How many people in this world right now, do you think, call this thing not real? In the United States, it used to be the minority that would say those things. But recently, it's been suggested that Christianity has fallen into the minority, something that was completely counter to the way our country was set up according to the Constitution. But what does that tell you about what's going on in the rest of the world also? Most of the rest of the world says, this just can't be. This is just out of people's imagination. Well, I'll tell you this, what an imagination it was. But I don't think it's an imagination that's created that. So, what is it to be real? Let's go a little further into the definition of this. It's occurring or existing in actuality. In actuality. Occurs in actuality. Well, it occurs to me that if I counted everybody in here, that everybody is in here. And this place does exist, doesn't it? It's not just some imaginary thing in our head that we're thinking about. What is real? Okay? Now, when it's used as a noun, this is what it is. It's a real thing. A real thing. I'm looking at Karen, and she's got a real pretty gold necklace on. She's got a gold-looking necklace. Whether it's gold or not, I don't know, and I don't care. It's fake gold. But that does not deny that is still a piece of jewelry around her neck. You sitting in here is a fact, isn't it? And facts are hard things to fight against. Then there's another word here, and this is the one that really, really jumps out and gets you. So you pose the question, what drives a person to become a Christian? Just hearing some guy like me up here talking? What is it that drives a person to become a Christian? Think back. I think everyone in here is a Christian. Think back to why you made the decision to become a Christian. Was it selfishness? It was on my part. And it still continues to be that way. And that's something you have to recognize. That it's one of the few selfish things that you are allowed to have. Okay? Because without it, what would happen? So, let's look at this. Reality is the word I'm looking for. And this reality is used as a noun. Again, a person, place, or a thing. The first definition is the state of things as they are, rather than as they imagined to be. Things, they're just exactly the way they are, aren't they? Okay? When you were little, what did you imagine about yourself? What did you think? Oh, I'm going to do this, or I want to be that. But what has turned out for you? Has everything turned out exactly like you thought when you were a kid? Imagination can do a lot of things, can't it? But we come to reality. What is the reality here? And everybody that's in here that's been a baptized believer faced that reality at one point in time. Now, what was that reality? Well, let's go a little further with reality here. It says the quality or state of being real. When you first heard about Jesus and you hear these stories and you're reading some of these stories, you ever find yourself thinking, is this really real? Did this actually happen? Did the flood happen? Did Eve happen? Did humanity happen? Well, apparently something happened because we're all here, aren't we? And those of us listening to this, whether you think it's nonsense or not, we're all human beings. So that's a reality, isn't it? So there comes a reality check at some point in someone's life, especially after the Messiah came. And what in the world am I talking about here? How many people in this world do you think that Jesus was just some person or some made-up thing? Show me the proof. Give me some proof. I want some proof. What do you do when you're confronted with something like that? Reality hits you in the face, doesn't it? Do I know enough to be able to conduct a legitimate conversation with someone who says, nah, this stuff doesn't exist? The reality check, where does that come from? Again, think about it. Before you became a Christian, I was relatively young in comparison to some people. Some people don't come to Jesus until late in life. But maybe it's because they chose to ignore it, or they never heard it put in perspective. They never got a reality check on these sort of things. And that comes back to us as a Christian. I've been baptized, and yeah, I go to church on Sunday, but I don't really know that I know much about the Bible. Don't really read it very much. I just listen to that guy up front, maybe on the radio or the TV from time to time. But when you're talking to somebody that says, I don't believe any of that stuff, what do? You put a zipper on this thing? Or can you provide explanations that are good enough to where they would at least go away and give some thought about something that will happen in everyone's life. Anybody want to venture to me the one thing that's inescapable in all our lives? Death. It all comes to an end, doesn't it? That's where the ecclesiastical writer is starting to relate to vapor. All the stuff in between really doesn't count for much. Because how much do you leave behind? Think about those that have gone before you. When I say gone before you, those have died before you did. What did they leave behind? The only traces they left behind was maybe some stuff written on a piece of paper, a picture, some money, and a bunch of junk. What's important to me would have absolutely no importance to my wife. Now, her stuff, I guarantee you, I'm highly, highly impressed with her stuff, and I'm going to hang on to it, till I die. So the reality is this. This is where the reality part of this comes in when you hear about Jesus. I'm going to die. I may not die today. I may not die tomorrow. But at some point in time, you will transfer from the land of the living to the immortal. That's what we all believe, isn't it? We've been told that over and over. Well, we've been told also that you've got two choices as to where you want to be. You want to be on the good side or you want to be on the bad side. Here's the reality check. This entire book is about what you choose to do with it and how it will influence your life. Okay? Reality. And the reality, the part that makes reality is death. No one likes to talk about it openly too much in church. But it's there. And it sticks in the back of our mind. Most of the time, maybe you don't think about it for a day or two, but it's in there. It's floating around. And it's telling you, the clock's running. How much longer will it run for you? Because the reality is, that's it. So, and I thought I would toss this little cookie out here for you, because I think most of us in here have heard this before. And I'll just read it the way I wrote it. It has been stated that there are only two things certain about human life: taxes and, someone say it out loud, taxes and death. Well, maybe you can scoot around the tax end of it, but you ain't going to get out of that second part, are you? It's there for all of us. But in one way of looking at it, maybe there are two deaths in life. What did you put a stop to whenever you were baptized? And you were supposed to put a stop to it and try and control it. In other words, you killed off what you were doing beforehand. Right? What do you do if someone has been a breaker of the law? Throw them in jail for a while, and then they get out. And they say, I'm never going back to that. What happened there? They died to that part of their life. Same thing occurs here. Because all of us up here, who's in control of the choice? No one but you. There's no shirking that one. You can't get around that one. Taxes and death. Facts. Taxes is a fact, and death is a fact. And both of them are unavoidable. I'll continue to read from what I wrote. It says, some facts are hard to understand and or follow, aren't they? So sometimes there's things that you just, I'll only do this because I have to. That's sort of a thought. Well, I tell you what, let's turn over to Acts 26. Let's just take a look at something. We all know this fella. Second half of the Bible is pretty much a lot of his writing. Authority authority of people that are in power. Okay? In other words, he thinks he's right, doesn't he? And remember what Paul was before he became the apostle, Paul. What was he? Anybody remember what sect of the Jewish religion he was? He's a Pharisee, one of the strictest sects that they had. When I say sect, it's S-E-C-T. He says, while so engaged, I was journeying to Damascus with the authority and commission of the chief priest at midday. So, King, I saw on the way a light from heaven, brighter than the sun, shining all around me and those who were journeying with me. And when we had all fallen to the ground, I heard a voice saying to me in the Hebrew dialect, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It is hard for you to kick against the goads. What does that mean, it's hard to kick against the goads? Well, the goad is something that's used to kind of like a cattle prod. Sharp stick, maybe. You do that, you know. Keep going forward, that sort of a thing. That's what he's saying here. He said, it is hard for you to kick against the goads. Well, what is this voice actually saying to him? Well, let's dig a little bit further. And I said, who are you, Lord? And I said, who are you, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But get up and stand on your feet. For this purpose I have appeared to you, to appoint you a minister and a witness, not only to the things which you have seen, but also to the things in which I will appear to you, rescuing you from the Jewish people and from the Gentiles to whom I am sending you, to open their eyes, so that they may turn from darkness to light and from the dominion of Satan to God, and they may receive forgiveness of sins and an inheritance among those who have been sanctified by faith in me. When you became a Christian, the word that we've been talking about is reality. What was the reality that you faced? I don't want to face death and having not followed what God told me to do. Just bottom line. That's bottom line. I don't know how many of you get scared or got scared, but every once in a while when I think about this, the hair will stand up on the back of my neck, get a lump in my throat, tear or two in my eyes. Because the reality is, you're going to die. And then comes judgment. Now, does that scare you or not? Did that scare you enough? Is it designed to scare you? I suggest yes. But it's also designed to inform you. Hey, sport, it ain't going to last forever. You think about that. Paul was asking, who are you? And the thing is, he already knew. He already knew. Remember Stephen? When Stephen gave the big talk there in Jerusalem? Who was holding the coats? Paul. Can you imagine what maybe flashed through his head? Especially when he writes later on, he says, I was a murderer. That's a pretty tough one. That's a pretty tough one to think about. But then he had something else to look forward to after that. We'll come to that next week. But again, the point behind this entire lesson is the reality of, if we didn't have death, how reckless would we live our lives? We were just created to go on forever. We were created to be 25 years old forever. But how many of us in here have long past 25 years? Most of us. So from a preacher, what I heard years ago, time is short. It's real short. Most of us in here have already passed the halfway point. We're probably, if you got 100%, most of us are probably in the 80% or higher ranks of how close is the reality of cessation of our life. Some people, it doesn't scare some people. I've got several friends. I don't want to hear that bunch of mess. Shut up, Roberts. You're an idiot for believing that stuff. Oh, am I? Well, I don't want to be in your shoes. I'll try the best I can, while I can, to prove my worth to my Creator. You, if you thumb your nose at Him, what do you think He'll do to you? In my notes I have written here, says reality about mortal life is this: it comes to an end. For some early, some late, it comes for all. There is no escape. Because there was this person named Jesus, and he died also, didn't he? But he proved something with that. One, he proved you're going to die. But what else happened? When you cross that threshold of death, there's something else that's going to happen to you. And he came back as a mortal. I suppose I'm going to call it a mortal. He came back to give us proof. Now, for us, we may not come back walking in the flesh as Jesus did. Because remember what Thomas said, I don't believe you unless I can stick my hand in the hole in your side. Okay, go ahead. Here it is. The proof was there. It will happen exactly the way I say it will happen. I'm not referring to me. I'm talking about the way Jesus and God has set this up. You will live your life, you will die, and then judgment comes. Okay? Written here also, mortal death is inescapable. There are no exceptions. Now, every once in a while we hear about this on TV, or you go onto YouTube or some of these other places, and these people have died, and they come back and, oh, it's a wonderful thing. We've seen all of this sort of stuff. Well, I'm not going to sit and stand in judgment with those people. Because if they got a second chance, they got a second chance at it. My wife can verify I came about that far from it. All I had to be is about 6 inches to the left, and it had killed me instantly. As it was, I got all beat up, was sore trying to plant grass about 2 weeks later. Wasn't fun. It was in the wintertime when that happened too. So, to read a little further in my notes, after mortal death, when someone contemplates about this, what thoughts are thought? Does reality hit us head on or not? That's a question right there. How many people can get right to the point and then walk away from it? Known several. I've known several people that have been baptized in their life and then just basically shirked it. They figure, oh, well, I've been baptized and that's all I got to do. Well, wait a minute. That's like, gee whiz, taking a bath and then going hiding in the closet and never coming out. What good was it even taking a bath in the first place? I pose the question, is there escape from what I did with my mortal life? Well, let's turn over to Ecclesiastes 12. I think all of you have heard me hammer away on Ecclesiastes. We're going back to King Solomon here. And he's quite explicit about this. But let's just read verse 1 in chapter 12. And this is one of the keys, even now, to being a Christian. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw nigh, when you will say, I have no delight in them. And then he goes on and gives a description of growing old, what it's like to grow old. One of the things he talks about is light. I know for a fact we've got someone in here that can't see. What would she trade to get the light back in her eyes? Kind of one of those things. Let's just read from verse 6, and we'll go ahead and finish the book out. It says, remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed. The pitcher by the well is shattered and the wheel at the cistern is crushed. Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. He's talking absolutely about death. And he goes through that reading in 12. He goes through the process of that. Verse 8, there's that word vanity again. Vanity of vanity, says the preacher, all is vanity. Remember, when you read vanity, substitute the word vapor in there. You can grab a handful of vapor, but it's gone as soon as you grab it. This thing, let's continue reading. Verse 9. In addition to being a wise man, the preacher also taught the people knowledge, and he pondered, searched out, and arranged many proverbs. The preacher sought to find delightful words and to write words of truth correctly. Wow. Why did he write those down? Are we still not reading those words? You just go back before Ecclesiastes and we wind up in Proverbs. Verse 11. The words of wise men are like goads. There's that word goad again. And masters of these collections are like well-driven nails. What does he mean by that? What do you do when you drive a nail into a piece of wood? You want that nail to jump back out? You like nail it into some rubber and it flies back out? No, a nail is designed to stay put, isn't it? It's designed to hold something in place. The words of the wise are like goads, and the masters of these collections are like well-driven nails. They are given by one shepherd. Verse 12. But beyond this, my son, be warned, the writing of many books is endless, and excessive devotion to books is wearying to the body. Well, is he referring to this, or is he talking about mankind's books? Even this, I'll tell you right now, I've got to where I use my phone, and I'll have Bible Gateway pulled up at night, and I'll fall asleep reading something out of Bible Gateway. But I don't find it, for me, I do not find it wearisome. The more I learn, the more I want to learn, because it helps me in the continuous battle that goes on in our lives. Even after you've been baptized, the battle never stops. Do I really need to eat 5 pounds of steak at one sitting? I don't think so. I just use that as an extreme example right quick. So we've come to the conclusion about all this stuff. The conclusion, when all has been heard, is fear God and keep His commandments, because this applies to every person. It doesn't say every other person, or skip the president, or that poor guy over there. No, it's everybody. Verse 14, for God will bring every act to judgment, everything which is hidden, whether it is good or evil. And I made a little mental note down here at the very bottom of this. Once your mortal body has died, sin can no longer be removed. It's the permanent stain that stays. And it's an inescapable on that. How do you get out of this mess? When I say mess, how do we get out of this? We've been given an opportunity, haven't we? What is that opportunity? Anybody want to put their hand up and say? Well, He died for us, didn't He? Came back to life to prove that, hey, this is what will happen. I'm showing you. This is what will happen. Well, if you would, just turn over to John 14. We'll just read one verse. Okay? It's verse 6. Anybody can you, if you got that one committed to memory? I didn't have chapter and verse, but I had the memory. I had memory of the verse itself. It says, Jesus said to him, I am the way. He's speaking to Thomas. Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father but through me. So do you believe that or not? For those of us that are in here, I think so. I think you do believe that. Because did it change the course of your life? I know it would have. It did mine. Sometimes I've deviated off the path, but I try to get myself back on straight. Why else do we ask for forgiveness of sins? This is the revelation. This is the reality that comes to mind, is that I am going to die. That's what all these lessons up to now have led up to. The finality of life should prove to you that it's inescapable. You're going to die. And I hate to sound horrible about this, but it's a fact. And facts are hard things to get around. But here is the escape plan right there. The Messiah came and proved it. And the more you read and learn about the Bible, the more you understand it. And better things happen in your mind the way that way this happens. So that reality stands up. Do you think people that maybe were involved in an airplane crash, before they got on that airplane, even thought about that? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. How about an automobile accident, or the accident I had? Was I thinking about that when I came up there and hit the side of that car? No. All I thought was, no. Simple little word. So that's one of the things about being a Christian. You come to that reality. You do come to that reality. I will die. What am I going to do about it? You've been given the opportunity. You can snuff it out, or you can act on it. With that, I'll end the lesson. If I've said anything that's wrong, hopefully it's been a thought-provoking thing for you, and it would be something to where you can approach somebody else that's contemplating these things. And you can take them deeper into Scripture. We've only touched the edge of this. So they would come to believe. Anything else? If I've said anything in error, please let me know. Thank you.